Parrot TV, the voice for humanity.
Hello, welcome to the New York Parrot Literary Corner. I am your noble host, Dustin Pickering. You know me from many TV shows such as the New York Parrot Literary Corner. Today we have the New York City-based writer, Madeline Artenberg, who was a photojournalist and street theater performer before falling for poetry. Her work has appeared in many publications, such as Rattle and The Poet. She was a semifinalist in Margie, the American Journal of Poetry contest, and a finalist in Mudfish 2020 contest. One of her poems was nominated as Best of the Net in 2020 by Poets Wear Prada. For many years, she has been co-producing the alternative New Year's Day poetry extravaganza. Thanks for joining us today, Madeline. How are you?
I am so happy to be here, and I wanted to give a shout out to the people that brought me here. So Johnny McIntyre's Uncluttered, I love that. I stumbled on it. And through that, I met Rick Christensen and then James Bryan. And then I think you were on some James Bryan Spofest, and here we are.
Excellent. So it's wonderful to meet you online, and I'm glad to be able to bring you to our audience. We have a good, nice global audience on here. So my first question is, what was the moment when you moved from poetry from street theater and photojournalism into poetry? Was there like an aha, or was it like a sudden thing, or were you always reading poetry and maybe just felt it come in and kind of sneak in on you? It was an aha moment.
No, there was an aha, but I hated poetry.
Oh, wow.
Because all I remember in school is they had us do Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, and my knees were knocking and I couldn't remember anything, and it was frightening. And then later on in high school, college, I was already thinking out of the box, and the teacher would say, no, this is not the right interpretation. Wrong,
oh,
wrong,
wow.
wrong. So I was getting, instead of my A's, I would get a B, and I was so frustrated. So I was visual artist. I was painting, and then I was photojournalist. 7 years, I had a press pass, and I traveled through Central and South America. And I was in a president of a group called Ventana. And that was a global exchange of culture to better understand Nicaragua and all the places in Central America. And the governments down there, especially Nicaragua, at that time was filled with directors and actors and poets. So it was getting into me. And I was doing slideshows for over 1,000 people in the US on the different places that I went. But I was so scared to talk, I would write everything out, including the jokes and all that. But people were saying, that's so poetic the way you're talking. So here we go. Here's the end of the story. When I came back, I went to New Eurekan Poets Cafe with a friend because we thought there was Spanish music there. And it was a poetry slam. I had told my friend that something popped out. I don't know what it is. She threw me on stage. And I was saying, I don't know what this is, it popped out. And then a teacher at Writer's Voice, that's well known in New York, stood up and said, you got something, don't you stop, come to my class on Monday. And that was Denise Levertov.
Wow.
Yeah. So I studied with all kinds of people, including Galway Cannell and Robert Bly, lots and lots of different people. And so the moral of the story is, that minute that my voice in that poem, bad poem though, was recognized, I sold my cameras that week, because I knew that anyone can take a picture if they're good as mine or better, but no one can write my poem in my voice with my history. And I was sold. I was so hooked from the second.
Wow. That's a fascinating story. I find, that with Denise Levertov, I mean, that's fascinating that you just happened to be sprung out as poetry from her. I mean, she's a wonderful poet. I've read quite a bit of her work, so I really admire her. And I was friends with Sam Hamill for a while before he passed, and he was good friends with her as well. Do you find there are any commonalities between poetry and photojournalism and street theater?
Yeah, in fact, when I read a couple of my poems here, people do notice, and I know it from my gut, that it's dramatic, it's very visual. They always say, oh, it feels like I'm there. And that's exactly what I want. And I also read it in such a way that I'm experiencing it so that it allows the audience to experience it. Long ago, when I first started in '92, I was like sobbing. You know, and my poems can be raw and very emotional, but I know I don't do that anymore. But I do, you know, I have to keep it in. But I am definitely experiencing it again in the moment.
Interesting. So it kind of has like a snapshot of a moment in a way, like, you know, photojournalism, and also like street theater, you performing it. So, and very interesting comparison there.
Mhm.
Do you ever just like, if you're, you know, since you have a background in street theater, do you ever just spring poetry on people on the street just when you're walking along and just, bam, you know, just here's a poem for you, sir, you know?
No, no, I don't, because I spent many years as a political activist, and we used to spring on people, even people sitting in Central Park trying to have a picnic, you know. Hi, are you registered to vote? You know, and then we would do
Right.
part of a skit, and they would say, oh, leave us alone, you know. So I have such a history of that. I don't want to, you know, bother
Don't
people.
want to be too much of a bother to people. Yeah, I guess political activism and then poetry. I mean, you come from a background of, you know, of coming up and kind of snapping at people and jumping into their lives when they don't want you there, and
Yeah,
they're just kind of like, maybe they don't, they may think a little bit shy, you know. So I
yeah,
mean, yeah, I can see that can be kind of somewhat quasi traumatic in a way,
yeah.
having to do that for so long. You know, you don't feel like you're comfortable with just, you know, doing a street performance of poetry. Have you ever done like a planned performance in the street, or like, you know, a very public open space like a park or
Well,
something?
I get to feature a lot
Mhm.
because I've been around, and people in, you know, I have fans. So yeah, I was just at the it's the Theater of the New City, and they've been doing their festival for, I don't know, 40, 50 years at least. And that was my first foray out of the pandemic as far
Mhm.
as face to face. So I was one of 19 poets chosen to kick off the poetry part of the festival. So I'm on open mics all the time. You know, Zoom has been a blessing. I don't know what I would have done without it. But I also co-host
Mhm.
Fahrenheit series with Linda Kleinbub. And again, since 2002, I've been producing. When we talk extravaganza, we have 180 poets. It's all day long. And
Wow.
we've been doing that. I haven't been producing it since it started, but I've been participating since 1995. So it's the longest running extravaganza of
Mhm.
poetry, something like that in New York City. So yeah, I'm constantly on stages. And what has really kicked up my poetry performance is karaoke. I'm a
I
karaoke
used to
crazy
do
person, which I haven't
karaoke.
done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Haven't done in a year and a half,
Mhm.
but you know how you throw yourself and you get into characters. I think I'm Mick Jagger. I do, you know. So it's
I
really
do
helped.
Johnny
It's
Rotten pretty well.
I yeah.
It's fun. It is very fun. It's yeah. So you know, you like to perform, so you like to be kind of in a, you know, put on a, try on a hat, you know, and be a person, a different character, you know. Do you find like when you're writing your poetry, do you have a voice that comes out, or how would you describe your poetic voice?
Yes, because it thrills me to hear you describe me the way you just did. I was an abused
Mhm.
child. I had no voice. I never spoke to anybody. I was not allowed to have friends. I was you know, really, really smart kid, but I would just raise my hand to answer something. It was brutal. So for me to be described just the way you did, it's like a dream come true.
Hmm.
That's why poetry hooked me in that second, like, oh my God, I can have my voice.
Right.
And through the miracle of poetry, you can say things that you actually didn't have the guts to say in person. And that's also something that I'm very familiar with. And it just gives me that whole new open world of creating a beautiful reality.
Interesting. Interesting. So do you have a specific, persona that you write through, or, something that kind of is like a sev to your creative mind?
I would say that the poem guides me. So
Hmm.
I could have a funny voice, I could have a mixture of funny and tragic, and I could have lyrical, narrative. I do tend more to narrative than lyrical, but it's I know, I'm not sure if I'm
Hmm.
recognizable, but I know people say that I'm very crafted, and they're not confused by my work. They're really in it. They experience it,
Wow.
like I said before. So I would say that that is a description, but as far as the same kind of language or tone, no, I don't do that. It's the
Hmm.
poem is guiding me, the material.
Yeah, I think that's true of poets generally. Is it's you don't necessarily. I mean, I don't plan a poem. It just happens in the moment, and it can be anything. I mean, I could start off with a sentence, and by the end of the poem, it's a completely different scenario going on.
Yeah.
So it's very spontaneous. And I think I can't remember who it was that described. I think it was Billy Collins. I think described
Mm.
poetry as a process of discovery. Just as I
Hmm.
described it. So yeah, that's fascinating how it works. I'm glad you found that as a way to kind of be yourself and speak your mind at the same time, and as being, you can play a persona in the poem, but you can also be yourself, because the persona is really, a mask, it's a self,
Yes.
your person. So it's fascinating. And I was curious, you published with Rattle. I don't know if you had much experience with Tim Green, but I was curious what it was like working with him.
Well, I answered a specific theme, and I
Okay.
think it was something like government workers or something like
Oh
that.
yeah, I think I
And
remember that.
yeah, and I had been in customs, and I had this really good poem about being the only woman
Hmm.
in customs, being an import specialist. So he grabbed that up. I haven't submitted anything since, but I've gotten into a whole bunch of other
Hmm.
places. And I know he's been around a long time,
Right.
and the rattle, Rattle's considered very, very high
Right.
quality.
I know quite a few people who have published with him. They're all people I respect highly, and
Yeah,
I do know Tim Green he's very professional. He's very kind and a very intelligent man. I follow him on Facebook, and will
cool.
read his posts and stuff. So I'm just curious, how it was like to work with him,
Yeah.
as another poet. I mean, I've heard quite a bit of mostly positive from
Mhm.
people that have worked with him. So in the poetry circles, and eventually we'll get to your poetry. I'm really excited to hear, you read your
Good.
poetry. But I'm curious, how do you think that other poets can support each other more than they're doing now? Is there like something that we could be doing, to support each other? You know, whether it's through online interaction or through the
Mhm.
reading series that are going on all over the country and the world.
I would say that the pandemic was really good for New York poets because we have expanded. Like here I am, like I said, a lot of poets that are in, the central time zone. And then, of course, people will be from foreign countries on the call. So really expanded. And I think that during the pandemic, poets have been even more connected.
Hmm.
Before there was, like a click would go to this reading and a click would go to that reading. But my God, I could spend 5 hours reading my notifications that poets are writing, and they're getting published all over. We've been a very busy bunch as a
Hmm.
whole, during the pandemic. So as far as supporting each other, I find poets very supportive. I really do.
Hmm.
People praise each other when they get published, and people say, yeah, you should go, try and submit to such and such,
Right.
they may like you. So there's always people who don't fit into that, but as a whole, it feels like family.
Hmm.
It's really very nourishing.
Excellent. I'm glad that you experienced that. I've experienced quite a bit of that
Good.
myself, just the uplifting and the, like you said, suggesting, oh, I like this poem. Maybe it would fit here or it would fit
Yeah.
there. We'll do quite a bit of that in the community. And, we try to find each other a space and a nice, area for us to publish in. So speaking of, the poetry and stuff, so would you like to share a poem
Yes,
with
I
us?
would. And I just want to say, because I know that never to describe anything in a poem, I give it over to the audience. But I just want to say that when I first started writing, the first things that popped out were things about my family. And so this is supper time.
Okay.
Our mother never cooked like our grandmother did. Her mother, Katie, with ingredients from scratch, took an hour to prepare, a whole morning to get done, filling the apartment with warmth. Our mother reduced food to its driest, flattest state, broiled what should have been babied on top of the stove, or tenderly minded inside. Our mother would throw under the broiler flesh or fish, never look until edges curled into the same brown, no matter what it started out as, until it toughened up like a wrestler, punching our teeth and gums as we tried to chew. No sauce on top, no salt, no spices. We couldn't talk much for all the effort needed to eat the halibut or dry white chicken. We couldn't complain, couldn't ask for things we weren't getting, like allowance or summer camp, couldn't plead with her to stop hitting us, stop screaming. All we could do was chew and chew, get through supper time.
Hmm. There's so much there, so much emotion. I like your performance. It's not overly dramatic. It's very mild, and it does draw you. I mean, I do see that when people say that. You kind of feel as you're moving into the scenario that what's going on, and the emotion of it. The feeling of it from your performance as well as the poem itself. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you very much for saying that.
Quite welcome. Would you like to share another one?
Yes. And in fact, I'm gonna switch.
Okay.
Again, this comes out of trip I made to Cuba. So, given all the background that I described, I'm very interested in the world being a better place.
Absolutely.
So this is American in Cuba, 1989. At the Museo Bellas Artes Havana, preschoolers tell me their families bring them here often. Everywhere, girls and women like strutting bouquets in hand-sewn cotton dresses. Boys and men, heads under hoods of 50s American cars, breathing deep the smells of Miami. I stroll near the hotel, arm myself with "No me moleste" and "Policía, ayúdame, por favor." A dark-skinned young man approaches, speaks little English. I understand him to say, "Need your help, don't want your money, give you my pesos for dollars, good things only in dollar stores. Please, pretty lady." He shows me his ration coupons, hardly enough, begs me to help him. I am considering his request when La Policia swoop out, slam him into a wall, ask for his papers, my passport, and whether he's bothering me. "No problema," I say, but they drag him off. He calls out, "I just wanted to talk to you."
Wow. Yeah, that's very sad, I have no words, but yeah, that's a very good poem, and you brought it out again, with the way you present it.
Thank you.
Excellent poetry. And it's pretty easy to understand what you're saying. So there's no need for a long commentary or anything. You kind of get the idea from hearing it about how troubled, in this particular instance, a young man is trying to get help and exchange his what he has for something that he can tangible that he can use. And,
Yeah.
and the police interfere, the authorities get involved as they do so much, they meddle a lot.
Yeah, and I wrote that, a while back, and of course
Mhm.
it has definite relation to what's going on now. And
Mhm.
so I was happy that
Oh,
Juneteenth was
yes,
yesterday. It
yes.
was like amazing.
Yes, now it's a federal holiday. We had an excellent poet Friday, Deborah Turner, with her, and she read a poem called Juneteenth. I believe it had been nominated for
Wow.
Pushcart. Yeah,
Oh, wow, very nice.
so that was nice to have her read, and she was very pleased to have read it. So it was really nice. It was
Good.
great. So yeah, and you kind of already answered this question a little bit to an extent, but I thought I'd ask it again to give a little more time for it. Have you met any fascinating people in your poetry journal, and what fascinated you about them?
Hmm. Um, well, I say everybody has something fascinating about them because
Hmm.
that's what poetry is that I love so much. It's everyone's voice. So everyone's voice is different.
Hmm.
And I was very surprised and delighted when like younger poets would come up to me and say, I'm I'm gonna have more balls because you read this and that, and it delights me, not just younger poets, but other poets. And I
Hmm.
will say things like that to, other poets. I'll say, wow, I never thought to look at it that way, and that was really cool.
Hmm.
So I guess that everybody is fascinating in their own way. And it's nice that we acknowledge each person's fascinating, uh,
Hmm.
demeanor or whatever, or performance, or just life. Because that was again another thing is that we are sharing our lives, our thoughts, the honesty, the rawness. Not everyone writes that way, but a lot of New York poets do. There's
Yeah.
like a competition to be more raw and more out there and this and that. And so
Mhm.
I'm not in a competition. I'm just trying to, express as whatever is raw, that is my truth.
Right.
But yeah,
Yeah, I think that's the case. I mean, most poets we like to write and enjoy reading for people, but it's not a competition. I think a lot of people forget that. You don't want to go overboard. You want to be honest and raw. You don't want to be like dramatic and raw. You know,
mhm,
then it loses a little bit of its salt. It just it just doesn't work sometimes when you're a big prima donna or
mhm.
also a big expressive. Too much is there's a such thing, and I think it's better to just be honest. Unless,
Yes, and you said an interesting word. You said salt. So
yes.
there are, there's of course there's poetry slams and rants and things like that. That's not
Mhm.
me.
Yeah.
But I know that at the very beginning, I was like amazed, poets would be cursing all through the poems and F this and that and all of that stuff. And
Hmm.
I had a teacher that right away said, that's lazy.
Yeah.
If it's intrinsic to the poem, but it's lazy, find a different word, find an interesting word. You don't need 25 F's, all through a whole thing. That's very
Correct.
boring and lazy. So there's that kind of, thing that some people do. I
And
don't.
it
So
does.
I,
It really loses when you say the same word over and over. It starts to lose its meaning to you, and it's like you've heard this 1,000 times already.
yes, yes.
So,
I mean, I will use regular words to describe sex and all that. I have quite a few. That's one of the themes I write about: relationships
mhm.
and sexuality. And now I'm writing about growing older and a lot about abuse. And that started, as I said, from the
Right.
time I started writing, which is interesting because the way I grew up, I used to think that all the abusive things that were happening was just me only. Was my catchphrase. Now
Hmm.
with Me Too, I say me too. But I know, and for a long time I thought it was just me or me only.
Yeah, I think
So
that's
it
definitely something that the Me Too movement did is bring some solidarity to victims and turn the attention away from the perpetrators. And I definitely like that aspect of it, that people were able to see, firsthand that there was so many people who have been in these situations that we didn't know. A lot of people didn't know. I was aware, I was aware like a lot of women have trusted me, but a lot of people were not so aware of those things. know, and it's good that we had a movement. I mean, if anything, if we accomplish anything, we're more aware now than we were of how prominent a problem this can be.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Yeah. Mhm.
So do you have like a pet peeve, a poetry pet peeve, or an Achilles heel that, you know, something that poets do that really can bother you in poetry? Or do you know, like we kind of talked a little bit, you know, using the obscenities too
Yeah.
much, or
Yeah.
throwing away, you know, throwing words loosely around constantly in a way that kind of ruins. But do you have any, like, something that you read, like maybe even reading, that you're just kind of, yeah, this just doesn't work for me, you know?
Hmm. Well, I was actually going to say that in open mics, there are some poets who are so soft spoken off stage, and when they get on stage, they are like lunatics. They are
Mm,
screaming and yelling and shouting, but that's their persona.
mhm,
And I know that lots of comedians, for example, are, you know, they could be depressed and, you know, personally, and then they're, you know, life of the party on stage.
right.
So that is a common thing. But as far as things that poets do, mm, I don't know. Just when I want to shake some poets because they read in a monotone.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I wish, you know, sometimes I go up to them and I say, you know, maybe that was a great poem, really enjoyed it, and maybe you could sort of vary your voice. And they say, oh, you know, whatever. But because you know, I enjoy their poetry, and then I just want them to deliver it better.
Mhm.
So that's why I know that's why I've gotten to be in a lot of, you know, features and open mics, because I have the background and the sort of the impetus from the childhood to really deliver it.
Mhm.
But yeah, there's a lot of monotones around.
Yeah, that's interesting. I do know. I mean, I think poetry, they get them reading like. I had a teacher in high school that pointed that out early on in me, that when I would read like that, and she kind of teased me, and she said, "You read like Robert Frost," you know. And she said, "Look at the way he reads his poetry. Sometimes it's just like that."
Ah, I didn't know
But
that.
I didn't know it either, and she pointed that out, and I was like, you know, that's a point. I should learn a little bit of style and get my voice work a little bit better for me, you know. And that was my junior year in high school, and I
Hmm.
started thinking about it then. I've always kind of had that, you know, writing. I've always been a writer, but yeah, that's definitely something that a lot of people do, is they read kind of the monotone. I've seen it too.
Yeah, because then it's hard to enter the poem because every
Hmm.
word sounds the same, the emotion doesn't change. And very often my poems can start out funny, like I said, and then go to a very dramatic place they could just turn. So, you know, if you're going to read the whole thing the same, it's
Yeah,
not the
and it's not
poem.
as interesting too. It loses a lot of its
Hmm.
capacities, emotional. And if you get up and, you know, you really put your heart into it, it's just like, you know, music or any other art form. You know, people get more interested and involved in it. And it has the energies that you want, you know, that you convey with words, that you put those energies in your performance as well.
Hmm.
So I think we have about a remaining 4 or 5 minutes. You know, I'm just curious, where do you see yourself in 5 years with your poetry?
Ah, people, I do have a book that's out, but it's an older book. It's on Amazon. So that was wonderful. And I had, you know, a chapbook and all that. And
Mhm.
people do say, you know, we want a book from you again. We want that. And but I've been concentrating on entering contests and doing very well, you know, like finalists, semifinalists. And I just think I would reach more people that way. And then, you know, I've been submitting to, you know, lots of good places. So that's kind of where I'm at. But I do know, I think maybe in 5 years there should be a book. Yeah, and
Okay.
I just want to keep getting better and better. And I,
Absolutely.
you know, and just expanding my horizons, which pandemic has, you know, shown me that there's lots of other kinds of poetry around. I find the poetry in the let's say the central time zone just very, very thoughtful. And there's also just people are very honest and And sometimes some poets in the New York scene could just be very like kind of showy and for, just sort of impact. They just want to knock your socks off with whatever. So, but there's so many good poets in New York too.
Yeah.
So I just want to keep writing because I have a daytime job that just kills my left brain. I'm a senior tech writer, process analyst. So it just takes it out of me. I can barely, sit there because all day long I'm like this. And then if I'm writing, I got to be like this again or submitting. And it's so hard. So it's been a struggle for a while. And so whatever I give myself a break, whatever I can submit or whatever I can write, I just thank myself and, I'm doing the best I can.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's it does sound like an interesting jump from doing non-creative typing to doing into the writing and trying to sort of balance the two. I mean, if I was typing all day at a job, I'd be like, nah, I don't want to do it when I get home or on the weekend. Definitely. Yeah. So it's maybe there's also a way to do it with, narrate with your voice to computers and they plug it in, I think. So that might be something.
Yeah, thank you. I know someone else just suggested that. I probably have to look into it. You're absolutely right. That would help because I'm in the IT department, so I'm writing troubleshooting documents and all kinds of app documents all day long and this and that. So it's completely the opposite of making poetry. Completely.
I think we have about a minute and a half or a minute and so left if you want to say maybe some thank yous or, impart some ideas to people to keep us going in this, the remaining part of the pandemic and some words of wisdom you might want to share with other artists out there.
Oh, I like that. That's very good. So, it's things that I've touched on. Be thankful, be real. Don't be afraid of the things that come up. Don't push them down. I know that when I wake up sometimes and I haven't been thinking about a poem I've been working on, it forces itself through my subconscious and I have to keep a pad by the bed because all of a sudden it has solved something and I really wasn't thinking about it or didn't even think that it could be better, that particular line. So don't be afraid to let things come through you and don't devalue them. Just value them and just know that the most important thing is when you are as truthful and as raw and communicative as you can be, which includes the way you perform it, people are going to love you. They're going to love it. They're going to be inspired. They're going to thank you. It's going to help their poetry. It's going to help their humanity because of the connection. So it's just so far reaching. And that, and someone said yesterday, June 19th, I think came out of some poetry, maybe at the inauguration or something. I'm not talking about the law or anything, but that poets now are being appreciated more on the world stage. So, we have a very important role always. We always had from the beginning of time. It's been song, poetry, all of that stuff. So we're in that amazing tradition.
Absolutely. So thank you very much for joining us today, Madeline. And I think we've got a lot out of your readings as well as, what you've discussed. And it's been wonderful, talking with you. So thank you again for joining us today.
Same here. You're a wonderful, articulate host, and
thank you.
Genuine, and the questions are fantastic. And I thank you so very much. And I'll look for the link and send an email to friends so they can hear me.
Absolutely. This has been the New York Parrot Literary Corner. I'm Dustin Pickering. We had Madeline Artenberg today. We had a wonderful discussion. So if you guys out there, anybody out there has a little extra money to donate, you can do that at paypal.me/nyparrot, paypal.me/nyparrot. And that link will be at our YouTube underneath the video here. And also, if you want to get in touch with me to discuss your art, we have New York Parrot here available for everyone. Subscribe. Please do subscribe, by the way. Everyone out there, subscribe. We're looking for 1 million subscribers. And you can get in touch with me at literarycorner.newyorkparrot.com. New York Parrot our literary corner at newyorkparrot.com. 1 million subscribers. Please subscribe. I cannot emphasize this enough. Share the links, discuss, leave comments. Thank you. This has been the New York Parrot Literary Corner. And I'm Dustin Pickering. Have an excellent afternoon.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you so much.